handcuffs clicked shut around my wrists in front of 40 witnesses, and not a single one of them moved. That sound, cold and mechanical as a gunshot, cut through the noise of the Saturday farmers market like something final. I had done nothing wrong. I had receipts, I had witnesses, I had my name on a badge clipped to my lanyard. And none of it mattered to the officer standing behind me, gripping my arm like I was a flight risk. I would prove every single thing. And Officer Derek Hale would spend the rest of his career, what little was left of it, wishing he had never laid eyes on me that morning. But none of that happened in a single afternoon. Let me take you back to where it actually started. I was 34 years old, working as a senior compliance attorney at a mid-size firm in downtown Atlanta. Compliance is one of those words that sounds boring until you understand what it really means. I was the person companies called when they were about to break the law, or when they already had. I had a corner office on the 11th floor, a salary that had taken a decade to build, a 7-year-old daughter named Zoe, who collected ceramic frogs and sang to herself in the shower, and a condo in Decatur with original hardwood floors and a kitchen window that caught the morning light in a way that made coffee taste better than it had any right to. My life, if I'm being honest, was not dramatic. It was steady and purposeful, and I had worked hard to make it exactly that. Saturday mornings were ours, mine and Zoe's. We had a ritual that started before either of us was fully awake. She would pad into my bedroom at 7, still warm from sleep, and we would lie there for exactly 9 minutes before getting up, no more, no less, her rules, while she narrated the previous night's dream in elaborate, nonsensical detail. Then coffee for me, orange juice, and a single piece of toast with strawberry jam for her. The farmer's market 2 blocks away, if the weather was good. That morning, the weather was perfect. The kind of Atlanta October morning where the air has finally forgiven the summer. The West Side Farmers Market ran from 9 to 1 along a stretch of converted warehouse lots. Zoe had a tradition of spending her allowance on the flowers she judged the most dramatic. That week she was eyeing a bucket of deep burgundy dahlias, while I made my rounds: heirloom tomatoes, fresh pasta, a block of aged Gouda from a vendor named Paul, who always gave Zoe a free sample of something she couldn't pronounce. It was the most unremarkable morning imaginable. That was entirely the point. I had been coming to this market for 3 years. I knew half the vendors by name. I was wearing a yellow linen dress, carrying a canvas tote with my firm's logo on the side, walking with my daughter on a bright October morning. I want you to hold that image. I want you to understand exactly what Officer Derek Hale saw when he decided I looked suspicious. I had stopped at a jewelry table near the end of the row, handmade silver rings, the kind Zoe liked to try on, when I first noticed him. He was young, maybe late 20s, in full uniform, standing near the market entrance with the particular posture of a man looking for something to do. He was scanning the crowd. And then he was scanning me. I felt it the way you feel a cold draft from a window you didn't know was open. Specific, directional, impossible to rationalize away. I told myself I was imagining it. I picked up a ring, checked the price tag, set it down. Zoe tugged my hand. "Mama, the flowers," she said, pulling toward the dahlia buckets. "5 minutes, baby," I said, and looked up again. He was walking toward us. Slowly, but deliberately. The walk of someone who has already decided where they're going and what they'll say when they get there. I still gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was checking on something near the vendor's table. Maybe I was directly in his path by coincidence. I have always extended that courtesy. It is a professional habit and a survival skill, and sometimes, I have since learned, it is a dangerous one. "Ma'am," he said, stopping 2 feet in front of me. His nameplate read, Hale. He had pale, sharp eyes and a jaw that looked permanently clenched, the kind of face that had made up its mind before it ever arrived. "Hi," I said. Neutral, the voice I use with difficult clients. "I'm going to need you to step aside. There's been a report of shoplifting in this area." Something tightened in my chest, but my face stayed perfectly still. Years of depositions will do that to a person. "I haven't taken anything," I said. "I've made 2 purchases this morning. I have the receipts right here in my bag." "Step aside, ma'am." "Officer," I kept my voice even, almost gentle, "I'm happy to cooperate fully. I'd just like to understand what specifically is being alleged before I do. I can show you the receipts immediately." I reached into my tote. He moved. Not quickly. That was the thing that stayed with me afterward. The slow certainty of the motion, as if this had already been decided somewhere I wasn't present for. His hand closed around my wrist. Then my other arm came back. Then there was the metallic snap of the cuffs locking into place, and Zoe made a sound I had never heard from her before. A small, bewildered noise that wasn't quite a word, like a question the body asks before the mind catches up. The metal bit into my wrists. My tote dropped to the pavement. The dahlias Zoe had been holding since the previous vendor scattered across the concrete in a burst of dark burgundy petals. Around us, a circle of silence had formed. 30, maybe 40 people, frozen mid-Saturday, watching. A woman with a bread loaf pressed to her chest. A man who had stopped mid-bite of a sample cracker. Paul from the cheese table 15 feet away, standing with his mouth slightly open. Not one of them spoke. Not one stepped forward. And in that silence, heavier than anything Hale had said, louder than the cuffs, I understood exactly what was happening. The cold rage that moved through me then was not hot or jagged. It was precise. It settled into my bones like a temperature change, slow and total and permanent. "Mama." Zoe's voice was very small. "Baby," I said, and I kept my voice steady, even as something deep in my chest went very quiet, the way a room goes quiet when all the heat is suddenly turned off. "Stand right where you are. Don't move. I'm going to handle this." Hale was already speaking into his radio. He hadn't looked at me since the cuffs went on. He was describing me, black female, yellow dress, approximately 35, detained at West Side Market on suspicion of theft. And each word landed like ink on a document that couldn't be unwritten. I took one breath. Then I asked him, very quietly, for his badge number. He gave it to me. I memorized it on the spot. I have a very good memory. It is another professional habit. What Officer Hale didn't know, couldn't have known, standing there with his hand on his radio and 40 frozen witnesses and my daughter holding a broken dahlia stem, was who I was about to call. He had no way of knowing that 31 minutes from that moment, he would be standing in front of his sergeant. Or that 90 minutes after that, there would be a name he had never heard of that would make grown men go pale. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because before any of that happened, something else did. Something that made everything I'd just experienced look like a warning shot. The sergeant arrived in 11 minutes. His name was Torres, and he was a compact, efficient-looking man in his late 40s who took in the scene with the expression of someone calculating damage before the car has even stopped rolling. He looked at me, wrists cuffed, standing in a circle of spilled dahlia petals. And then he looked at Hale, and something passed across his face that wasn't quite anger, but was in the same neighborhood. He had the bearing of someone who had spent 20 years doing this job and understood immediately the specific weight of what he was looking at. "What do we have?" he said. Not a question. An accounting. "Shoplifting complaint, sir. Subject was reported by a vendor near the east entrance." "Which vendor?" Hale paused. Just half a second, but I caught it. I catch everything. "A verbal report, sir. Made to me directly." "You have a name?" Another pause. Longer this time. I'm still gathering the full details. Torres looked at me for a long, unhurried moment. "Ma'am, do you have identification?" "I do. It's in my tote bag on the ground next to my daughter." He retrieved it himself. He looked at my bar card. I kept it in my wallet. Had for years, partly as a professional habit, and partly because moments like this were not entirely outside my imagination. His face didn't change expression, but something in his posture shifted. The way a building shifts when you quietly remove one load-bearing assumption from beneath it. "You're an attorney." "Senior Compliance Counsel," I said. "I also have receipts for every purchase I made this morning. And I'd like these removed, please." I held up my cuffed wrists, steady, no tremor. My voice was level. I had stopped shaking approximately 2 minutes after the cuffs went on, when the cold precision had finished replacing everything else. Torres uncuffed me himself. He handed me my tote. He told Hale, in a very quiet voice, to wait by the car. And then he turned to the crowd, still there, still watching, a number of them with phones raised now, which I had already noted and mentally filed, and said he was sorry for the disruption. "I appreciate that," I said. "But I'll need a copy of the incident report and the name of your department's Internal Affairs Division. Today, if possible." Something moved through Torres's eyes. Not pity, not quite respect. The specific recognition of someone who has just understood that a process is already in motion and will not be stopped. I picked up Zoe's broken dahlia stem from the ground. She took my hand without a word. We walked back to Paul's table, where he was still standing very still with his hands at his sides, and he silently handed me a paper bag with a block of the aged Gouda in it. Then quietly, I filmed all of it, every second. "You want my number?" "Yes," I said. "Please." That was the call Hale never saw coming. Not the one to Internal Affairs, which I made from the parking lot while Zoe sat in the back seat eating a piece of cheese and watching me with her serious 7-year-old eyes. The call that ended Derek Hale's career was the one I made at 9:47 that morning to a man named Richard Okafor, my firm's senior partner, my mentor for 10 years, and as of 14 months prior, the appointed civilian liaison to the Atlanta Police Department's Oversight Commission. I had his number memorized because he was the one who had given me my career. I had his number memorized because of days exactly like this one, which I had hoped would never come and had prepared for anyway. "Maya," he said, picking up on the second ring. "Richard, I need to tell you about the last 40 minutes. I have a witness with video footage, approximately 40 people who were present, and a badge number I've already memorized." A brief, precise silence. "Are you safe?" "I'm fine. Zoe is fine. I need this handled correctly." "It will be," he said. That particular flatness in his voice that meant the process had already begun in his head, and he was simply narrating its conclusion. "Send me the badge number now." I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 more minutes after I hung up, watching Zoe in the rearview mirror. She had moved on to her small drawing notebook, tongue between her teeth, completely absorbed. Children that age have a remarkable capacity to locate the next ordinary thing and inhabit it entirely. I envied her that. My wrists had red marks from the cuffs. I pressed my thumbs against them and breathed until my hands stopped carrying the memory of being restrained. The following week was not quiet, but it moved with precision. Within 72 hours, Paul's footage had been reviewed by 3 people above Torres's rank. Within 5 days, I had been formally interviewed by a civilian oversight investigator. The footage was clear and complete. 41 seconds showed me with hands visible, making no movement toward anything, right up until Hale moved. Then 60 seconds of him cuffing me while Zoe stood 3 feet away with a broken dahlia stem. The investigators also discovered, and this was the layer I hadn't known about, the thing beneath the thing, that this was not the first complaint filed against Hale. There had been 2 others in the preceding 18 months, both involving black residents, both absorbed and dismissed at the precinct level before reaching oversight. Both of those individuals were called and interviewed within the week. I found out on a Wednesday evening, standing in my kitchen while pasta boiled on the stove. I turned off the burner. I stood in the silence for a moment, tasting what that information meant. That what had happened to me had happened before, had been witnessed, and had been carefully filed away. Then I called Richard. "The prior complaints," I said. "No preamble." "I know," he said. "This needs to be public record." "I agree completely. Let's talk about how we do it." I gave a statement to a journalist at the Atlanta Constitution-Journal who had covered police oversight for 6 years. On the record, my name, my title, Paul's footage attached. The story ran on a Friday. By Sunday, it had been picked up by 4 national outlets. Derek Hale was terminated 11 weeks after that Saturday morning in October. The termination was upheld on first appeal. The 2 prior complaints were formally re-examined, resulting in findings that overturned the original dismissals. The precinct lieutenant who had quietly buried both of them was placed on administrative review. None of it erased a parking lot full of dahlias, a child's bewildered sound, the precise cold weight of metal on wrists. I was under no illusion that it did. But I think about the dahlia stem I brought home that morning, the broken one Zoe had been holding when the cuffs went on. I put it in a glass of water on the kitchen windowsill, expecting it to last a day. It lasted 3 weeks. By the time it finally let go of its petals, one by one onto the white sill, I had passed through the worst of it and come out the other side of something I still don't have a precise word for. Zoe asked me once, about a month later, doing homework at the kitchen table, whether the policeman got in trouble. "He already did," I said. She considered this, pencil resting against her chin in that exact way she'd had since she was 4. "Good," she said, and went back to her worksheet. I stood at the kitchen window for a long time after that, watching the last daylight leave the street. The coffee on the counter had gone cold. The marks on my wrists were long gone, leaving nothing but the memory of their shape, and the knowledge that I had stood in a parking lot in front of 40 people, with cuffs on my wrists and my daughter watching, and said clearly, without flinching, "I haven't done anything wrong." I picked up the cold coffee. I drank it. I had stopped needing it to be warm.